I say this, if the Democrats want to embrace people that hate our country, people that are so far left that nobody's ever seen anything like it, if they want to embrace people that are so anti-Semitic and anti-Israel, they want to do that. That's up to them. But I don't have to do that. I think what they say and what they've said is a disgrace to them, to the Democrats, and frankly to our country.
On this episode of Just Informed Talk, as Q has said before, symbolism will be their downfall. And we're going to look at the symbolic meaning behind the temple on Epstein Island and how it connects back to an ancient practice of child slavery, which is exactly what the allegations are today. Plus, we're going to check out a whole bunch of other news stories, so you guys are going to stick around and check this out. Hi, I'm Craig, and welcome to another episode of Just Informed Talk. As always, thank you to everyone who's hit that subscribe button. If you haven't, please come here, hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the bell for notifications so you get notified when these videos get posted, and hit the like button if you guys like this content and want to see me make more. So, today we're going to pick up right where we left off. Obviously, we have no new Q post to speak of. We left off at Q post 3457, and that was on the 18th. We're still waiting for more posts, but there is an incredible amount of information we're going to cover. And in this episode in particular, you guys are going to want to stick around because we're going to talk about Jeffrey Epstein's temple and its connection to ancient Egyptian slave trades and ancient orders of mercenaries. This is like, you can't even make this stuff up. And it all relates back to this picture that Q gave us here of this temple and the connection that Q was trying to tell us in saying that symbolism will be their downfall. So this is going to be a good episode for you guys to kind of get a more in-depth look at what the symbolism really is and what the symbolism that is their downfall really may be. So we're going to take a look at that, but before we get into that, we're going to do a few other things. First of all, if you want to get caught up on the latest Q posts and news and everything that's going on, come back here, watch these last videos, share them on your social media. Obviously, I say this a lot, but hey, we're trying to get the word out around the censorship and the algorithmic manipulations that YouTube has employed. So all you guys have to do is scroll down. There's a little share button at the bottom of this video. Hit that share button. Get the word out to everyone you know. That helps the channel out more than you guys will ever know. And it helps get the word out because our mission is to disseminate the information that the mainstream media will not, and to bring the truth as we know it for everyone to look at objectively and make their own minds up about. So that's what it is. And if you guys watched this last video, I just got to say thank you to everybody who wrote in the comments. I appreciate all of your messages of positivity. And I know I probably sounded a little more distressed in this video, but the reality is it's just frustrating. And if you guys want to watch this video and get an idea of what I'm talking about, it's pretty short. And there's just an example of what I see on a regular basis here at YouTube. But that aside, thank you for all your supportive messages. Very, very kind of you. I appreciate that. Now, getting into the latest, and also before we do that, also, if you don't know what QAnon is in the Great Awakening and you're kind of like, what channel have I just stumbled on? What's this guy talking about? Watch this video. What is QAnon the Great Awakening? It'll give you all that information that you need and a whole bunch more. So I really encourage you guys to go check that out as well. So today we're going to start with a few news stories, and then we're going to get into this whole temple thing because it is a crazy story. But first, here we are. We have this story coming out, and I guess this would be the more appropriate story to start with here. Would be the hijacking of two British ships. Now, there's video that's come out which apparently shows the Iranian Revolutionary Guard basically using a helicopter to drop troops on this oil tanker that was flying the British flag in order to seize control of it, and it's surrounded by a bunch of the fast boats that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard are known for using. And this is obviously in the Strait of Hormuz, and you can put together for yourself, you know, what happened here. They're all masked up here, and it's fairly obvious that this is a point of theirs to try to provoke confrontation and and also I think there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. And what do I mean by that? Well, as we continue to expose Epstein and Epstein Island, something that we're going to talk about a little bit later in this video, is it really coincidental that we're being pushed into this global war, another endless war in the Middle East, something to take the attention away from what we are uncovering on Epstein Island? And I'm starting to think more and more that Epstein Island is related to what we're going to talk about here in the occult sense, that this is a traditional order that of things that have been going on with the elite for a very long time. And that's going to make a lot more sense when we look at this one article, which actually basically takes what Q's given us and gives us a historical background to it, as far as dating all the way back to ancient Egypt. And that's something that you guys are going to want to stick around to check out. But as we see this happening and unfolding, there's a few ways to look at it, but I think the more important thing is, like, you hear President Trump's words. He says, we don't put a lot of oil through the Strait of Hormuz, and the British have to deal with this. Like, we have an agreement with the British, but we don't have an agreement to fight their battles for them. And that's what the key difference is between this president and every other president, because President Trump has taken a stand against these global elite aristocracy, old royal guard that exists and is at the beyond the highest levels of power, the power structures that exist. So he's basically said, look, we're about America first. We're not about protecting British oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. You have a navy, you have an army, Britain. Go and take care of your own problems, okay? And don't pull us into another war. Not to mention the fact that the Iranians are not stupid enough to go after U.S. Assets, even after what they did with that drone allegedly. Because the idea is this. They're just trying to drive up the price of oil, and this helps them because they're being killed, metaphorically speaking, by the sanctions that have been imposed by the Trump administration. Not to mention the general movement toward freedom that is overtaking certain areas that are, let's just say, less extreme. And that is really something that they're trying to fight against as we speak. But, look, this is the story as it's coming. And of course, you have all these random globalist news outlets, France 24, saying, is the U.S. going to lead a new war in Iran? And you're like, well, this is obviously globalist propaganda being shoveled into our face. As we can see, they're trying to basically goad us into another war and say, it's our duty to go and fight Iran in the Strait of Hormuz, when both of these countries, France, the Britain, they have their own armies and can take care of themselves if they wanted to stand against British or Iranian aggression in the Strait of Hormuz. So the whole thing is a complete farce from the beginning. So with that, another story that came out is we finally have a sentencing for this individual, Harold Martin, who was one of the many people who was stealing data from the National Security Agency and keeping it privately on his own server. So I think that this is an example of what we're looking at as far as, like, when you look at Hillary Clinton, you look at what's coming out with Jeffrey Epstein, and then you look at what is going to be coming out through the NYPD and Anthony Weiner's laptop. That is a story that has yet to be told. And I really hope that one day we will see justice for what was found on that laptop. And I think there are certain NYPD officers out there who know exactly what I'm talking about. But with that being said, this is for an example to be looked at. This individual got 9 years. There's other instances, but I thought it was an interesting story to bring up in context of what I just referenced. So that was something that I thought was interesting. Here's a great story from Mike Huckabee, who I really appreciate. It's talking about the real story about the Squad. Fascinating read here. And what it talks about is there's this faction inside the Democrat Party called Justice Democrats. Now, these Justice Democrats are basically a very, very far extreme left-wing organization associated with the Democrat Party, and they have been placing candidates such as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Rashid Tlaib and Ayanna, can't recall her last name, Ayanna Presley, and of course Ilhan Omar. They've been responsible for helping place these individuals allegedly. Now, what you do realize is when you look at their website, as is noted here by Mike Huckabee on his website, that when you look at this, you realize that this Justice Democrats is basically a faction of extreme leftists who are trying to infiltrate and co-opt the leadership of the Democrat Party. And they're implementing very, very dangerous and extreme ideologies, including being some of the top purveyors of the new policies that are trying to turn this country socialist, aka communist, doing things like trying to create the Green New Deal, which would bankrupt our economy and probably put us into another depression. Other things that obviously are just ultra left-wing progressive ideologies and policies. And if you look at this and you read the article, there's one part of this article I thought was really interesting. It says, after it kind of goes through all that and who they're trying to get rid of and all this stuff, it says, anyway, these people are all backed by Justice Democrats. And we at Team Huckabee found it very interesting that the four women dubbed the Squad and moving to essentially take over Congress and be its voice happen to be the most high-profile members of that radical group. Even a look at several conservative sites found this connection is not generally being made. It says the press conference, in reference to the press conference that they just gave about President Trump where they called him racist, says the press conference almost certainly was conceived and organized by Justice Democrats. I'll bet they even came up with the name The Squad, as they keep pushing their false narrative that anyone who leans to the right of Karl Marx or who dares to oppose someone who happens to be of color is driven by white supremacy and jingoism, as they themselves are driven by identity politics, which is racist, are openly racist toward whites, especially Jews, and decline to condemn terrorists and communism. This insistent and extremely organized movement, if given half a chance, will flatten its opposition like a steamroller or a tank in Tiananmen Square. So this right here, this one paragraph, I'm like, this sums everything up. So I've said this so many times. They call us racist while being the most blatant racist you could ever find. I mean, I really do believe that these people are just, either just maliciously ignorant or just have a complete inability to have any type of self-awareness. So if you think about it, listen to this line right here. I thought this was like hitting the nail on the head here. It says, if you oppose who happens to be of color, you're driven by white supremacy and jingoism, but they are driven by identity politics, which is racist. So they try to paint everyone else as racist when they themselves are the actual racists. And it's just, man, look, that's what we're up against. Here's another story. We already knew this story. They keep bringing this back up, but it's important, especially given all the events that are happening in the Iran, especially with the Strait of Hormuz and what we just talked about. Remember this. John Kerry has been secretly advising, allegedly, the Iranians, and they've been in contact. So we don't know if it's been advisory, but it has been contact made between a former Secretary of State who is not in any elected position or appointed position anymore, who is acting in complete violation of, I believe, the Logan Act, as President Trump has said multiple times. But this is all connected right back to the Strait of Hormuz, and this is something that we have to seriously keep an eye on. And then one more story. This was you've heard this story about the UFO people on Facebook saying they're going to storm Area 51. Well, that's all fine and good. Let me just tell you something that we should all kind of, I don't know if you're going to laugh at it or you're going to say whatever. I'm going to just try to objectively tell you what this was. Apparently, this guy put up this story about Area 51. And he said, hey, it was a group invitation on Facebook. He said, hey, let's all go like storm Area 51 and see the aliens or something like that. So, I think the post was up, according to some people, it was like up for a few days, 3 or 4 days. And it only had like 40 likes and nobody even looked at it. And then all of a sudden, it on Facebook, mind you, it just goes viral, right? Then now I think we're up to almost 2 million people who have actually signed, or have actually put their name to this movement and said they're either maybe attending or will attend this raid on Area 51, as they call it. Now, first of all, there's a few things to note. It's genius what's happened here, but it's also kind of scary when you think about it. So I'm gonna explain to you the genius part of this. If you want to, like, for instance, we have this problem with Antifa. We have a problem with people in our country who think it's okay to use violence against words, to storm a U.S. military base and try to overthrow our government. I think that's a bad thing, right? In my humble opinion. So what did the government do? They took some idiot, no offense, some person who is not, let me retract that statement. Someone who was obviously just messing around and joking. And they basically took his post and made it go viral so that every single person would expose themselves. And I'm just saying, if you think that these people who haven't said, I'm going to be at Area 51 in whatever, September, to storm a base, which is the most laughable idea I've ever heard in my life, if you don't think they're on a watch list right now, and probably most of them are these leftists who just think it's all fun and games when they're on the internet to say, hey, I'm going to do this. And then they end up showing up at Antifa rallies in mass and, hitting people with bike locks. I mean, I'm serious. So they're getting targeted, and they've voluntarily submitted their own information to the U.S. government to be able to monitor them. And good luck raiding that base. I'm sure that will not end in a devastating way for everyone who tries to do that. I should think it will. Here's the story I want to talk about, though. This is about Jeffrey Epstein's island. And this is an article that I found that basically goes into the history of what Q is referencing when he talks about the symbolism of the island. And I thought this was fascinating. So I'll leave a link to it because we're not going to read the whole thing, but I want to read some parts too. I'm going to start with the beginning here. It says the temple on Epstein's island has deeper meaning than what the MSM and other disinformation agents are trying to push. Looking at the design from a historical perspective, you will come to understand that it's linked to the trafficking of young children and brainwashing them to do the bidding of the elite. And then it gives us Q posts here to kind of look at and review. One of the more recent posts that we got back on the 18th of this month was saying a colorful building that some news reports have called the temple was actually a gym when Epstein worked out when he was on the island, Scully said, noting in an interview with ABC News that the gym had a memorable feature, a massive frame photo of a topless woman. So Q is telling us in this post to look at this article and look at this particular quote, and then asks us, how do you shape a story, facts versus fiction? Think for yourself. And then Q gives us this picture of this temple. Now, what I think is interesting is what they say here, that the building that Q posted is called Hammam Yalbuga. I'm sure I'm not getting that pronunciation right, but that's okay. It says a Mamluk era public bath that was built in 1491. To understand the significance of Epstein's island, or a temple, we have to dig into the past of the Mamluks. Sorry, it's a weird word to say. So it goes on to say the Mamluks were a class of people, mostly Turkic and Caucasian ethnicity, who served as slave soldiers between the 13th and 16th century in the Islamic world, spanning from Egypt to Syria. Now, remember that. These were slaves that were serving in the Islamic world. So that's back when they were very much in control of a large portion of the Middle East and Europe and Asia. And this is talking about basically when you read through this. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but they're basically a slave class, but a slave mercenary class that was actually held in higher regard than the people of that society at that time. But they were not allowed to, I guess that you could say they weren't allowed to fraternize with the actual populace, but then they actually became more powerful and they ended up forming their own order. Now, this is something that you have to note here. And it's talking about an early practice of this, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering all these names, but the Burji Circassian dynasty. And it talks about the Circassian Mamluks. sorry, these are tough words. You try it. It says were white slaves that were taken from the northern Caucasus Mountains and traded in slave markets. They were captured in their early childhood, usually around 13 years of age, by the sultans who raised them in special military camps to become soldiers for the ruling class. Many of the sultans were of Circassian origin themselves and were acquired as slaves by previous sultans. These Circassians converted to Islam and became freed after rising within the ranks of the military by proving their loyalty. This is the period that is relevant to this report, so they talk about it further. Here's a couple quotes. This one's from a book about it, saying by the late 14th century, Circassians from the North Caucasus region had become the majority in the Mamluk ranks. Okay. And then it talks about here from Wikipedia, while Mamluks were purchased as property, their status was above ordinary slaves who were not allowed to carry weapons or perform certain tasks in places such as Egypt. From the Ayyubid dynasty to the time of Muhammad Ali of Egypt, Mamluks were considered to be the true lords and true warriors with social status above the general population in Egypt and the Levant. In a sense, they were like enslaved mercenaries, as I said before. Here's a quote about them from Voltaire. This is interesting. It says, quote, "The Circassians are poor and their daughters are beautiful, and indeed it is in them they chiefly trade. They furnish with those beauties the seraglio of the Turkish Sultan, of the Persian Sofi, and of all those who are wealthy enough to purchase and maintain such precious merchandise. These maidens are very honorably and virtuously instructed how to fondle and caress men, and are taught dances of a very polite and effeminate kind, and how to heighten by the most voluptuous artifices the pleasures of their disdainful masters for whom they are designed." So what this is basically saying is that these sultans who were basically engaged in this slave mercenary trade of these Circassians, they would take the daughters of these Circassians and train them how to be basically concubines or sex slaves, if you will. Now it's talking about how this connects back to Jeffrey Epstein's temple. Now, if you look, there's a few ways to understand this, but it says it right here. It says this is talking about the Mamluk Empire. It says throughout the Mamluk Empire, you'll find many buildings, especially mosques, using what we know today as the ablaq style. Ablaq is an architectural style involving alternating or fluctuating rows of light and dark stone. And although it's not unique, it says they utilize the ablaq lighting effects and so on and so forth. Now, here are some examples, and it shows you the light and dark side, and just looks exactly like Epstein's Island, right? So finally here it says the meaning behind Epstein's Island, Epstein's Temple. It says Epstein's Temple was an ode to the Mamluk era of when captured children were taken as slaves to do the bidding of the elite class. Young boys were taken and groomed to later become soldiers, while young girls were taken and groomed to later become personal concubines of their masters. Do you now see the parallel between the Mamluks and Epstein? These people are sick. And it goes on to give us these Q posts where Q said, they made many current former enslaved children famous. Hollywood is filled with them, models, fine loudest voices, brainwashed, who was adopted, who was born in. They thought the sheep would follow the stars. So Q's been telling us about this for a while. Here's another one where they highlight the part 2, how were they adopted into the cult as children? What were they provided for obeying and staying silent? Fame, power, you call it. You guys can read this full article. There's a lot of information here. I encourage you to go check it out. But that's pretty much where we're going to wrap it up here today. I want to say thank you guys. A few more things before we go. If you want to just stick around, you can come here, hit the subscribe button if you haven't. Make sure you hit the bell for notifications and hit the like button if you guys like this content. Leave your thoughts, theories, and insights below. I want to hear what you guys have to think about all this stuff. Watch these videos, share them on your social media as well. A couple other ways you can help out the channel. You can come over here and find me at justinformednews.com, the official website for Just Informed Talk. Again, justinformednews.com. Links to the Q stuff, different news sites, breaking news, and of course the latest videos from the channel here as well. Also, you can come find me over here at Twitter at justinformu. That's the handle, at justinformu. Come here, give me a follow. We can have a conversation. That's a great way to connect. Also, you can come over here. There's a couple, I got the new channel, Just Informed Podcast. You guys should come check this out. Link will be in the description. Links to everything we've talked about here in the channel will be in the description, by the way. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications so you can get the next video as soon as it's up. And that's cool for a different take, behind the scenes kind of long form interviews. We got a few special interviews planned, so you're going to want to check those out. Also, a couple other ways you can help out the channel are both financial. You can come over here and find me on Patreon, patreon.com's crowdfunding website. You come here, click this button, become a patron. It's a monthly donation. You set it and forget it. Know you're helping create content on this channel. Without you guys, this channel would not have made it this far, so thank you. You guys are what keep this channel alive and make it so that I don't have to worry about what happens with the way YouTube changes their algorithms and everything. You guys keep this channel alive. And also I have a GoFundMe set up if you want to make a one-time or anonymous donation. Links to both will be in the description, as well as everything else we talked about here on this episode. So before we go, though, we do a segment at the end of each one of these episodes called God's Grace is Greater, where we talk about God's grace and how it is truly greater. And for today's segment, I want to share a letter that somebody wrote to me that I thought was really incredible. And I'm just going to read a little bit of it to you because I think it's something that's an important message that we should definitely be sharing with one another. And it says, "My great awakening has been on more than one level. When learning the truth about what's really going on and about the evil and darkness that has been allowed to take place, I felt shocked and terrified. Thank God Q brings a message of hope. I've been raised in a Christian family and had a Christian upbringing, but during my teens I had become more and more alienated from religion and quickly became a full-blown atheist. I completely turned away from God and stayed that way for 2 decades. I started to listen to your channel because of Q, including your message about God's love and the passionate way you talk about the message of the Bible. At first I didn't know what to think of it, but one day I decided to follow your advice. You said everybody can get a relationship with God. All you have to do is say a prayer and let God into your heart. And so I did. This is about a year ago. Since then, I say my silent prayer every day and often talk to God several times a day. I have been feeling different ever since and can best describe it as a feeling of peace inside me and the faith that there is a good force out there powerful enough to destroy evil, light over darkness. I feel hope where I used to feel despair. I have asked God for forgiveness for the mistakes I've made, and I pray for help to become a better person. I mostly pray for Q, Trump, and all patriots and ask God sends them wisdom and courage they need to defeat the cabal. Anyway, I just wanted to share my experience and thank you for the role that you played in ongoing spiritual journey back to God." Thank you for writing that. That's why I do this. And I don't usually get emotional, but when I read this letter, I was really touched. And it's not the first time I've ever gotten a letter like this. And I wanted to highlight it because I get this, and I just have to tell you guys that this is why I do what I do. This is what God has called me to do. This is why God's called me to be an evangelist, because I'm here to share the good word of God with you guys, and God will be there for you. And like I say, it's how it happened to me. You just open your heart up and say a prayer, okay? And remember that God loves you. That's all you have to do. And that's my message for you. I'm sorry if I got a little choked up there. It was a very touching letter, and I've tried to explain to people before that this is why I do what I do, but I thought this letter was important to share because they gave me permission to share it too. That was a big thing. But thank you to you know who you are, who wrote that letter. I'm not going to share their identity. They asked to remain private, but yeah, that's God's grace in action. And if I could just be a little small piece of that, then I'm a blessed man. And I'm thankful for you guys, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. So that's pretty much going to be it for me. Better wrap it up before I keep going too long. But thanks for watching this episode. Come here, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Make sure you hit the bell for notifications, and you know the drill. Hit it, punch it, karate chop it, whatever. Hit the like button if you guys like this content and want to see me make more. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you for watching this episode of Just Informed Talk. I'm your host, Craig. Godspeed and God bless each and every one of you, Patriots.